Another steel guitar lick in the key of A. This has kind of got a Clarence White kind of vibe to it. If you get a chance to listen to some Clarence White, especially some of the work he did with the Byrds, he's got some incredible steel guitar ideas and things. Now, he used a pretty modified Telecaster that had a B bender, G bender, all kinds of things on it. Even at one time, some pedal steel pedals kind of attached to it. But still, you can emulate some of the things that he did and kind of get some really cool steel sounds that way. So anyway, this is in the key of A and something kind of a little different. Okay, this is key of A. Let's look at the chords that are in this. A would be the 1 chord, or A7. A or A7 would be fine. D would be the 4 chord, D7. And then you have E, and then E7. So any of those would work depending on what your flavor is. If you wanted to sound a little happier, straight ahead, you'd probably use, just the straight A, D, and E chords. If you wanted a little more kind of dark kind of tone to it, you'd probably use more of the dominant sound, and then maybe even blend in between where you're playing A and then D7, and E7, A. Anyway, the point is those are the 3 chords in A, and that we're playing over the progression we're using to play underneath the steel lick. This is an intro, so typically a lot of intros use the 5 chord to start with, and then go from there to work their way back to the 1 chord. So in this case, it's going to be the 5 chord E, or E7, to D, right, or D7, and then to A. And that progression kind of sounds like this. It's E, D, A, E, A. And the E is replaced at the very end with a little walking up the E major scale, bringing it back to the A chord. So it's a lot of old honky tonk, a lot of old country songs, a lot of old, kind of, different kind of, 50s and 60s and kind of country stuff. But anyway, 70s have that kind of vibe to them. So this is kind of based around that progression, and that's kind of the chord changes to it. The steel lick itself starts at the 9th fret, and what I'm thinking about here is a couple of different scale forms and a couple of chord forms. If E is the 5 chord, I'm kind of feeling this kind of E triad here at the 9th fret, or E chord. Of course, you can do the inversion here. And then, of course, your D chord would be, here. And then your A chord would be here. So they're all kind of right there together. And then there's some scale forms that I kind of attach to each triad or each kind of chord form. Over the E, I'm kind of thinking E major pentatonic. And of course, by adding 1 note, I can have the major blues sound, or the country scale, as some people call it. And then over the A chord in this area, here's the A major scale. And that would also be the A major pentatonic scale right there. So basically there's a lot of notes in this area to work with to cover these chord changes. So the lick kind of starts when it's over the 5 chord E. I'm actually at the 9th fret on the D string, starting on B, which would be the 5th of the chord. And I'm going to play up to, I'm going to kind of bounce up to the root, E, on the G string at the 9th fret. And it's going to go like this. So that's the first part. Then I'm going to walk on up the major pentatonic scale there. And on the G string at the 11th fret is where my 3rd finger ends up. Now, what I'm going to do, when I bend this, I can bend it a couple different ways. You can bend the 11th fret on the G string, which is the G flat note, or F sharp note. You can bend it with your 3rd finger. Okay? Then you can come down and get your pinky on the B string at the 12th fret. Then come back here on the high E string while you still have the G string bent and grab the 9th fret, which is going to be C sharp. So you have, then you come back down to the B note on the B string, 12th fret, and then release the G string there. So you go back down to F sharp to the E. So it's now there's another way to do it too, real quick before we move forward. You can go just that's all exactly the same. So I'm going 1st finger to the 3rd finger, right? And then I quickly replace my 3rd finger with my 2nd finger and bend that F sharp. Then I go back to my pinky on the 12th fret of the B string, 1st finger, on the high E string, back to the B string at the 12th fret. So it's that's another way to do it. It's really 1/2 dozen to the other, but sometimes people, have a little bit more strength in their 2nd finger for some of those kind of bends. Keeping them in tune, which is, one of the big challenges of doing this kind of stuff. So you go, then you're going to come back after you played that first part of the phrase, play the B note at the 12th fret on the B string, and kind of echo the last part of that phrase. So you're going to go pre-bend that G string, drop that F sharp note, back to the root note, or E. Okay, and that gives us the first part of the line. The next part of the line is going to be, we're going to move down the G string to the 7th fret. This is going to cover the D chord at this point. So I'm kind of thinking, this would be the E, and this is going to be part of the D chord here. So this section, I'm looking at literally a D triad here on the top 3 strings. So I've got 7th fret, 7th fret, 5th fret, and that of course expands down. There's also the D chord here, D chord shape here. So, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start on the G string and I'm going to play the 7th fret on the G string, which is the note D, root note, and I'm going to go. And what I'm doing is I'm playing the D note twice to the E note, which actually is going to be more of a sus note or suspended note at this point. But if you kind of, if you don't want to cloud your brain with too much of that information, you can just kind of look at it around this D chord right here. So I'm going to play that note twice. And this is kind of tricky because I'm going to go third finger first, back to my second and first finger to help bend this E note up, which would now be bent to an F sharp. Then I'm going to play the G sharp note, and of course a half step slide to A. And I'm going to play kind of a dyad here. I'm going to play the E note, which is the fifth of A, and the A chord, or the A note, root note, on the E string. So I kind of go, and then kind of finish off the A section with doing kind of a, which is like hammering, even though I'm playing the B string and the E string at the same time, I'm hammering my third finger onto the F sharp note. Right, so that sounds like this. And then kind of finish off, I'm going to come back down here to my A major pentatonic scale. And there's your A chord. We all know that. A chord's built there. You got this possible A. You got your inversion here. A. And so I'm going to bend the fourth fret on the G string, which is the B note. Kind of bouncing back to the root note of the second fret, so it's. Then I'm going to kind of slide my second finger up to the B note on the G string, bring my pinky back in on the E note at the fifth fret on the B string. And so I'm trying not to bend this note, obviously, because you want the intonation of this to be as accurate as possible. And then, I'm kind of bending the B note up. I'm doing it slower. You can do it fast. But this lick I just chose to do a little slower. So that kind of walks through the whole thing. So we'll kind of go back up here and kind of walk through it all real slow. And it goes like this. Okay, you can also do this lick faster once you get the speed up on it, But just remember, if you're doing this line too fast, you kind of miss a lot of the, subtleties of the line or the melodicism of it. You kind of miss all the dynamics of certain aspects of it. But that should give you something else to kind of work with. Kind of got a Clarence White vibe there, so.